As we read God's Word, it's important to ask ourselves the question, what is this book telling me about God? What is it telling me about His character? What is it telling me about His nature? Because after all, the book is from God, about God, and it's about how He wants to have a relationship with us. The first 5 books of the Bible are called the Pentateuch, and it covers Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. In Genesis, there's a key word, beginnings. God emphasizes God's power in creation. In Exodus, a key word is deliverance. God's people needed rescued from slavery and oppression. In Leviticus, a key word or words are worship and service. God cares about the worship and service offered to Him. Numbers emphasizes how His people are to be directed and guided. In the book of Deuteronomy, we see a renewed covenant, a series of speeches preparing them to enter into the promised land. He is seen as loving and faithful. It's important to understand the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, in order to understand the rest of the Bible. Let's take a closer look at Exodus, the second book of the Bible. We see some themes in Exodus. We see who God is, His faithfulness. He's a promise keeper. We see Israel's theological origins, and we see Israel emerge as a nation. We see that God protects His name and reputation. God cares about how His people treat Him and respect Him. He also cares about how the other nations see Him versus other gods. The law is the first 5 books of the Bible. We see core tension between God, His people, and other nations and their gods. God calls His people to obey Him, to reflect His goodness, and to be loyal to Him. He also calls His people to reflect His goodness to the rest of the world. Israel is drawn to other nations and other gods, which creates the conflict. Exodus has 40 chapters. The first half, chapters 1 through 19, is called the rescue story because we see God rescue His people from slavery in Egypt. The second half, chapters 20 through 40, is called the relationship story. This section deals with how God forms a new relationship with His people in the wilderness. The first half opens up with the prelude of Egypt oppressing Israel. Moses escapes as a baby. And then we see God saves Israel. He sends the 10 plagues, and Israel goes free. God meets them in the wilderness. And the second half opens with the 10 Commandments, God's law, His covenant. Israel agrees to His covenant. God says if you keep the covenant, you'll receive the blessing, and if you don't, you will be disciplined. God gives Moses plans to build a tabernacle, a place to meet with God. It's where divine and physical meet. Israel breaks the commandments. God gives a second chance, and they build the tabernacle. God fills it with His presence, but His presence is so powerful, no one can go in, not even Moses. And the rest of the story will pick up in Leviticus. The Old Testament points to the ultimate fulfillment in the New Testament. Exodus shows us that He is a God who delivers. He is a God who saves. He is powerful and He is merciful. We should believe God and respect those who teach His word. God is our strength and our song and our salvation. We learn about leadership and the need for help from others. We see the giving of the law and the relationship with God. We learn about relationship with others. Moses shows us that there is more of God's glory to desire. God's mercy and grace and His long suffering is seen. His boundless love and grace and goodness and truth. We see God in Exodus. Our passion to know Him more should result in our faces being different and our hearts being changed.